Okay. Thank you for watching. And I just did something this morning that, according to antagonists of Mormonism, should have had me dropping my faith and making a deconverting video. But I'm not doing that. Specifically, antagonists of Mormonism, some of them, accused Joseph Smith of making up the first vision story and embellishing it, adding more details over time, and accused him of being a false prophet and a fraud. And I just read all 4 accounts which Joseph Smith wrote of the first vision. And that's not something, and the place I read it was on the church's website. Some of those antagonists accuse the church of hiding it. We don't hide it. It was in fact put in church magazines. Now, it's not in every single issue of every church magazine because we don't have an obligation to every month answer every single accusation made against us. If we did, we would have a 2-foot tall magazine coming out every month. But if something gets put in the church magazine, which we do not hide, which we do not tell people to avoid sharing, then it's out there for the public to see. So, I'm not convinced to leave the church because of these first vision accounts, which do have some differences. I don't see any contradictions. I would be concerned if he robotically wrote the same words every time. That, I think, is a stronger evidence of a story being made up. When you tell a story about something that happened to you, you probably, get details a little bit different each time, or leave a detail out. So let's get into some specifics about these 4 accounts. And by the way, I did not look at accounts by people who were antagonists of Joseph Smith. That's a source you should be skeptical of if you even read it at all as the antagonist of somebody. They've got some incentive to make up details. If somebody really, did say or do crazy stuff, read what they said and you'll see the crazy stuff there instead of, reading what their antagonist, who didn't believe them in the first place, claims that they said. So, was Joseph Smith worried about his sins or worried about which church to join? Those two things are not contradictory and mutually exclusive. He could think about both things. And when he tells the story, he focuses sometimes more on the one thing or more on the other. Not a contradiction. In 2 of these accounts, he makes no mention of difficulty speaking, or his tongue being tied, or bound, or held. But that's just the detail left out. And the one that's in our scriptures, he describes thick darkness gathering around him, and his tongue being bound. And the other one, he just describes that his tongue was bound. Those are not contradictory statements. They are different ways to get at the same point, that he couldn't talk. Then when God came down to him, he describes a pillar of light in at least one of them. And he describes fire in another one. That's not a contradiction, because how do you know there's a fire somewhere? You see the light. Smoke is another way to see it, but one way to know there's a fire somewhere is you see the fire. It gives off light. And in 1820, there were no incandescent light bulbs, mercury light bulbs, fluorescent light bulbs, light-emitting diode technology. The only way to get light was to have a fire. So he saw light, he described it like the only way that he had to get light. And the one more supposed contradiction, which is just details left out. In the 1938 version, and at least one of the other versions, he describes two beings. In one of the versions, he only says he saw the Lord. That's not a contradiction. It would be a contradiction if Joseph Smith had written only the Lord and none else. But he did not say only the Lord, he just said the Lord, which leaves the possibility there was somebody else there that Joseph isn't telling us about. The most important knowledge I have about Joseph Smith is what I have from God. The Holy Ghost has borne testimony to me that Joseph Smith was a true prophet of God. You can also feel the Holy Ghost tell you these things. Read Joseph Smith's accounts of what happened to him. Read the book that was translated by the gift and power of God, the Book of Mormon. And how do you know when you feel the Holy Ghost? If you're honest with yourself, you'll feel things that you know you aren't making yourself feel. When I felt the Holy Ghost, I wasn't, thinking to myself and making myself feel something. There was something outside of me that was giving me feelings. Feelings a lot like what Paul describes in the book of Galatians when he describes the fruits of the Spirit. Thank you for watching this. You have a good day.